And now, the best 60-ish seconds of your week.
Last week we were in sunny Orlando, Florida for CPAC, and now I'm back in South Central Pennsylvania, much balmier here, of course. And I wanted to give a quick report on CPAC 2021, which wasn't the biggest ever held, but in my judgment was one of, if not the best, because the enthusiasm and camaraderie and esprit that was witnessed among all the participants there was truly amazing, particularly given what we've just been through. The conservatives recognize that the future is ours and that we're busy building a coalition that can win a majority not only in 2022, but in 2024 and beyond, based upon the core principles of freedom and opportunity and a better life for all that conservative values and conservative principles bring to us. And of course, the big news, as always, the headliners on stage. And we heard from everybody from Mike Pompeo to Governor Ron DeSantis to the governor of South Dakota, Governor Noem, to Rick Grinnell, and a whole host of other luminaries from across the conservative movement. But the big news was the first public appearance of Donald J. Trump since leaving the White House. And President Trump delivered, as everybody expected, a stem winder to the great delight of those in the hall. I mean, this was clearly Donald Trump's crowd, and they ate up every word. One of the most important things he said was, no third party, not even any discussion of it. He gets it, that if you divide and subtract, you're in a very happy minority. If you add and multiply, you're in a less comfortable majority, but that's how you win and that's how you govern. And of course, the big news was the straw poll, as it is every year. And President Trump's job approval numbers were at record high levels, higher than any year during the course of his presidency, which is really remarkable in and of itself. His numbers eclipsed those of Ronald Reagan, the leader of the conservative movement for so many years. At 97%, there wasn't much running room at the top. Jim McLaughlin, the pollster there, joked that the media had voted that last 3%. But it was also interesting to note that when you got down to the questions about 2024, there was some slippage for President Trump. Not really sure why that is, but the numbers speak for themselves. When asked if people wanted President Trump to run for re-election in 2024, 68%, roughly two-thirds, said yes. Then the question became, if the election were held today for president in 2024, for whom would you vote? President Trump came in at 55% in that poll, thus still eclipsing all the others in the field, but not dramatically ahead of Ron DeSantis. Now, he had the home court advantage, of course, with the event being held in the middle of his state, but Kristi Noem also scored pretty well in that, finishing third. So a lot of chatter about the straw poll. The media ate up every word that President Trump spoke, and the eyes of the world were once again upon CPAC. So I hope that all of you will mark your calendars now to be there in 2022 when we're back at the Gaylord Center in beautiful suburban Washington, D.C. And in the city where sound travels faster than light, Washington, D.C., the swamp is busy at work. First of all, on a COVID-19 relief package. Now, when you look at this package, a $1.9 trillion endeavor, meaning that our children and our grandchildren are going to be paying that off for years to come. Virtually 90% of it has very little to do with COVID relief. 1% for vaccinations. And although they stripped out the subway for Nancy Pelosi, they left in the bridge into Canada for Chuck Schumer. I guess that beats a bridge to nowhere, but how this pork barrel nonsense has anything to do with COVID relief is beyond me. And line after line after line, having very little to do with the pandemic that was brought upon us. And Senator Ron Johnson had a genius idea. He made them read all 600 pages of that monstrous bill, which had most of the spending in there to bail out states, all of them blue, that had mismanaged their finances prior to the pandemic ever starting. So Senator Johnson's idea that let's read the thing really made some sense, because otherwise we get that, well, we've got to pass the bill so we will know what's in it. We do know what's in COVID-19 relief package now, and with nearly $1 trillion yet unspent from previous packages, this one should be seriously stripped down. Let's see if the Senate will do that work. And meanwhile, in the United States Senate, another piece of really bad legislation is moving over there, another several hundred-page bill that ought to be read aloud before they vote on it. This is H.R. 1, a bill that was sponsored by literally every Democrat in the House and slid through the House on a almost straight party vote. It's a terrible piece of legislation. It basically federalizes the rules for governing elections, stripping away the state's constitutional authority for administering the election process and dramatically curtailing their right to pull back on mail-in voting, to have voter ID laws. It even takes away the rights of states in many respects to clean up voter rolls that have to be purged of those who no longer are eligible to vote. There are a myriad of examples of really bad legislation tucked inside this H.R. 1, but overall, it is a federal takeover of the state's constitutional responsibilities. I don't doubt that if it can pass, that it will be challenged successfully in the courts, but there is an opportunity to stop it in the United States Senate, because if they don't nuke the bill, meaning do away with the filibuster, there simply aren't enough votes there to pass it. But if they're successful in doing that, there just might be. So I don't very often say, call your senator, but call your senator. And of course, we heard this week that the cancel culture has gotten to Dr. Seuss. Imagine that. The silliness of all this cannot be comprehended by people like me, and I doubt it can by you either. But interestingly, the markets always seem to win out, because the sale of Dr. Seuss books has pushed 5 of the 6 books that are in real question on his part to the top of the Amazon chart this week. Think about that. Finally, the markets this week, again, up and down and in and out, but at week's end, up almost 600 points on Friday's trading. So fears of inflation, which are very real, and rate scare, also a looming threat, continue to not daunt the markets, at least in the very short run. And for now, that is the best 60-ish seconds of your week.